Okay, Be'ez Hashem, we're going to finish off now, but Siyata Dishmaya Perik Base, which is Gavaldik. Let's do a bit of a chazura. Let's see where we're holding. What have we said until now? Let's understand. I hope yesterday's share was very, very clear for the Olam. If not, let's do a tiny chazura of what's going on. What have we been saying until now? The point of this parak is to discuss that every single one of us have a neshama, which is a chedik of the kamamal mamish, and he basically went on to explain that even though our neshamas that we feel are so low and so disconnected and so distant, lemaisa come from the very same makor, the same source, the Chochmas Hashem, that every neshama comes from. Just like, as we explained, a father's drop that he puts in is something that creates a child's brain and the child's toenails. So too, the Rabbeinu Shalom and his Chochmah, as we said, are one, which means that the Chochmah of Hashem put the neshama inside, which means the neshama that we have is coming from a very, very high place. The only difference is in the giloi, in the revelation that the neshamas have. Some people have a much bigger giloi, and some people have a much lower and smaller giloi, depending on the person, the neshama, his purpose, and where he's holding. That's pretty much what we have been saying until now. Now we'll move on, Rabbi Say. If I'm not mistaken, we're holding Ubazeh, am I correct? Yeah? Oh. Yeah, that's right? That's what we're holding? Ubazeh Yuvan. Now we can understand. My Miraboseinu Zal was pshat in the Gemara in Ksubas Daf Kuf Yiradav on the base. Ala Posuk Uldov Kaboy. Those of you that were here in Elul, we learned the Gavaldige Sefer Tomer Devora that spoke all about the Inyan Ul Uldov Kaboy, to cling to the Rabbeinu Shalom, to emulate the Rabbeinu Shalom. And of course, Uldov Kaboy means to be medabik to the Rabbeinu Shalom, to cling to connect to try and get as close to as Hashem. But Chazal explained it to mean, remember I told you that the Heilige Tanya uses the Lashon mamish many times. This is the second time we've seen it. I'm not going to point out every time, but mamish shows us, says the Mefarshim, how emes that is. That Chazal explaining pshat in the posuk, Uladov Kaboy, that when a person connects himself, is close to Tamid Chachamim, the Torah makes it as if he's mamish connected to, stuck to, and very close to the Shekhinah itself. Why? Ki al yedei devika b'Tamid Chachamim, through a person being medabik, being clinging to, being connected to Tamid Chachamim, kshuros nefesh ruach oneshama. We said that a few times. Shel amay haaretz umiyuchodos b'mahuson avishin v'shosham shebachachmei elah shehu yisbar v'chamasa esav echad v'hu amada. Meaning, when a person connects himself to Tamid Chachamim, you're basically connected to the Shekhinah. What does that mean? Let's say, for example, a person has a Choshev Yid, a Rav, a Talmud Chacham, a Rebbe, whatever it may be, that he's very connected to. So Chazal say, you're connected to Talmud Chacham? It's as if you're connected to the Shekhinah. Why? Why is it that way? No, I'm not. I'm connected to the Talmud Chacham. What's the Shekhinah got to do with it? You want to say because he's closer to the Shekhinah, he's got more shaykhs to the Shekhinah? That's the Poshep Shah. The Heilige Tanya is revealing a much deeper layer to what that Chazal means. And he's saying that when a person is medabik to Tamid Chachamim, what he's doing is he's connecting his nefesh, ruach, and neshama of a regular, normal person. And he's putting it together with the Talmud Chacham, which is all coming from the same source anyway, which is the Chachma Ilah, the higher Chachma, meaning Hashem, Shehu Yisbarach b'Chachmasei Echad. Because the Rabbeinu Shalom and his Chachma is one. It's not, as we've explained previously, that the Rabbeinu Shalom is the Rabbeinu Shalom and there's his Chachma. It's all one. It's the Metzias, the Pnimius of Hashem, so to speak, Kaviyachol, that went inside us, into that Neshama. And Mimele, when we're B'davek to Tamid Chachamim, it gets even closer. And then he says, those people that go against, sin, or rebel against Tamid Chachamim, Yenikas Nefesh Ruach Neshama Shalem, Mibchinas HaChoyayim, Shal Nefesh Ruach Nishmas Tamid Chachamim. They get a lower light. Right? Those people that are not so involved in Tamid Chachamim, they're distant from Tamid Chachamim, or even Chas v'Shalom, they go against Tamid Chachamim, they'll get a very small amount of light of Nefesh Ruach Neshama. Now, he's now going to ask a Gavaldige Kasha. And again, this is all to explain that our neshama comes from a very high place. And he's saying, I have a problem. What's the kasha? The kasha is the following. That what it says in the Zoya, that means the Zoya tells us that the madrega of a neshama depends on how much Kedusha happened at the time during Tashmish, when his parents were together and he was conceived from that Tashmish. The Kedusha that went on then is going to decide the Kedusha of the Neshama of that particular person. So his kasha is, I don't understand. If that which you're telling me is that our Neshama comes from a chelik and a kamama mamash, the Zohar says that it really depends on the amount of Kedusha that the parents had, b'shas, then they were together, and he was conceived from that. Well, that's what makes the Neshama. So it's nothing to do with the chelik and the kamama mamash. Ma'she'en kein b'nei amei haaretz. When you have a child that's born from parents that are amuratzim, they don't know how to mekadosh themselves, they don't know anything about holiness. Mimela, if that's the case, their children take after them. If that's the case, they didn't have any kedusha. So then, how could you say that our neshamas come from a very high place? It doesn't. The Zohar says it comes from depending on how much our parents had kedusha b'shas ma'aseh of the tashmish. Okay, that's his kasha. Hainu mishum. Explaining now the Zohar. She'ein l'chol nefesh ruach u'neshama. She'ein lo levush min nefesh da'atzmos aviv v'imay. A levush is a garment, right? A garment, as we know, is not the actual thing. The jacket, the shirt that we're wearing is not us. It's the clothing around us, okay? Shaila, does it define us or not? That's a different shaila. But it's not us. It's not who we are. It's how we dress. So he's saying when the Zohar says that the Kedusha, that the parents of Mekadosh themselves, B'shas Tashmish, that's the levush. That's the clothing that's around the neshama. That's what's going on. And it's that garment that gives the neshama the koyach to be able to do mitzvahs. We need that levush. And the higher kedusha that the parents had, the more levush he gets, the better levush he gets, the more he'll be able to do mitzvahs. And even the shefa, the abundance that is given to a person in the shamayim, hakol al yidei levush zeh. Everything comes from this garment. So what he's saying over here is the neshama itself is not dependent on the parents' thoughts b'shas tashmish. That's not what it is. It's more like this moshel that a person's got very sensitive fingers, but he puts on very thick gloves. When you're wearing thick gloves, you can't do much with your fingers because you're wearing these thick gloves. So what he's saying over here is the neshama is not from what the parents were thinking about b'shas tashmish. The neshama is a chelik and a kamama mamish. But there's a levush, there's a clothing that's around, right? That neshama, and that will make enough kamina. So it is very important. That's why he says now, v'im yikadosh es atzmai. If a person mekadosh himself b'shas tashmish, then yamshich levush kodesh l'ishmas beroi. That will extend that kedusha that he has to the neshama of his son in the form of the garment. Even a very choshev neshama will require the kedusha of his father. Avol, this is important. HaNeshama atzma, the actual neshama. Meaning, the quality of the actual neshama will never be affected by that which his parents thought about b'shas tashmish. That's irrelevant. That will affect the levush, the clothing, but the neshama itself, no. That comes from a chelik and a kamama mamish. And he says over here that sometimes, I'll bring you a raya, sometimes you have a neshama of one of the greatest people in the world that's born into the parents that are the worst people in the world. What's his raya? Kamosha Kosav Arizal. The Arizal brings down calls there, Belekutei Torah, Parshas Vayera, or B'Taimei Mitzvahs, Parshas Bereshis. And if you look at the Lekutei Torah from the Arizal, he brings over there, the example is Avram Avinu was born to Terach. See, here we have Avram Avinu, the father of all of Klal Yisrael, yeah, the greatest man, Kamat, Avram Avinu. Who's greater than Avram Avinu? Who was he born to? Terach. What happened? The answer is that the neshama is holy no matter what. The neshama has got kedusha no matter what. Yes, b'shas tashmish of his parents will make enough kamina for the levush, but the neshama is holy. So we finished Perek Beis. What did he come out with? At the end of Perek Aleph, we said we have two neshamas. The first neshama we explained at the end of Perek Aleph was what we call nefesh bahamis, right? The animalistic soul, and we said has good parts and bad parts. And then this Perek was defining the nefesh elokis, which is very much talking about the neshama which is a chelik of the kamama mamish. It's irrelevant where you're holding. It's irrelevant what madriga you're on. It's irrelevant what generation you're in and what you're doing, because that neshama comes from the same source as every great neshama that ever lived in this entire generation and this entire universe for all the history of Klal Yisrael. So we're dealing with something very special. That's our neshama. What we haven't answered, and as I said, it's going to take a while, and this is all basically what the Tanya is using as an introduction, is trying to figure out still the main kasha. What's a tzaddik? What's a beinoni? And what's a rasha? And more importantly, how can we use those neshamas to, as he said right in the beginning, to serve the Rabbeinu Shalom, which he said is very, very close to us, Kikorov Eilecha, which is the beginning part of the Tanya, to use those neshamas and understand them. And that's why he spends so much time understanding them, because only when you understand the neshama can you start to utilize that neshama. Be'ez Hashem b'siyata d'shmaya, join us tomorrow for Perek Gimel.